Welcome all astrology family. This is part 2 to the June 21st eclipse. June 21st, 1:41 a.m. And this is Central Standard Time, so you would have to adjust for where you live. Yes, June 2020. So that is this month. And the part 1 I will have attached below. If you haven't watched it, you want to make sure that you do that so that you have a greater understanding, because I go deep there about the sign of Cancer. Since this is an eclipse in Cancer at a conception point, a lot of folks call this an inception point or an Aries point because it represents that 0 degrees and the beginning of the beginning. On all cardinal points, a 0 point on any cardinal sign is considered the world axis. World axis means that something will occur and it'll be on a global level. It'll be on the world stage. It'll be something we will all be able to witness. So this eclipse on the 21st, 0 degrees, 21 seconds, moon, right? This is a solar eclipse where the sun and the moon are conjunct at 0:21 in the sign of Cancer. And it's happening on the world, or one of the world access points. So the other world access points, just so that we understand what we're talking about when I say points, cardinal signs are Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, and Aries. Some of the other players, some of the other planets that are going to be present at June 21st and their degrees. This matters because, as you see, you've got Jupiter and Pluto that we have to talk about, because Jupiter retrograding moves faster than a Pluto retrograding, and you see these numbers here. Jupiter is going to get closer to Pluto. We're going to want to know what the heck that's going to look like. What's it going to mean in your life? And by understanding where Capricorn energy is in your chart, we can then know where the place, the location in your chart answers the where in your life. We're also going to have to pay attention to Saturn, right? We didn't discuss that yet. We got to talk about what does it mean that Saturn on the day of that eclipse is at 0 degrees and 40 seconds. There's also going to be some other energies that we're going to have to dip into. Aries, 0 degrees, already mentioned that, and as an inception, as a cardinal access point, as a world access point. But when we see the planet Mars at 2549, which on the 21st of June, this actually is a 26-degree Mars. And so what happens is that Mars going forward will very shortly after this eclipse, the Mars at 26 degrees in Pisces will square the 29 degrees north node in Gemini. And so I'm going to dip into that and explain that. Plus we've got Eris at 24 degrees still squaring Pluto at 24 degrees. One of the other things I want to make a quick mention about is towards the end of this video, I am going to give you guys a little sneak peek into July. After this 2nd June eclipse, a couple of weeks later, we have another eclipse. So yes, we have 3 eclipses that happen like in a 6-week time period. And then I also am going to make kind of an announcement. I want to do something that can be appealing to both those who want the knowledge, and then something that will help those who, I just want a reading. So what I'm going to do is give you I'll make an announcement about what I'm going to do. Now, if you're new here, first of all, thank you for being here. This is the place to be if you are a seeker for knowledge. If you're a seeker of truth, you found the place. As these energies evolve, as our understanding and as our perception evolves, right? Like the planets up in the sky, the macro, they are nothing more than a mirror of who we are. Right? So this chart, your private personal birth chart, is inside of you. You know, the time you were born, the location that you were born, that moment becomes your personal frequency grid. And that personal frequency grid is your specific signature. It's your harmonic vibratory rate in the universe. It is special to you. And so understanding it gives you the ability to understand your role within the universe. Not just the role within your family and at home, but also within the collective. I extend out a big welcome and thank you for continuing to be a part of the community, for contributing to the channel, which, by the way, you do that by commenting down below. Comment below, and anytime in this video, make sure you have questions. Yes, comment them below. Eclipses mean change, okay? Think of it as an energetic reset switch. Think of it when your computer, you have problems, or your phone, and what's the first, right? Turn it off, power down, and power back up again, and it resets it. This is what an eclipse does. It's like this reset button. In the sign of Cancer, this is a focus of your emotional world, your feelings, your empathy, your understanding. Cancer's ruler is the moon. And so this is one of the things that makes this a powerful eclipse, other than it's at the 0 degrees. But it's, some eclipses happen in, Capricorn or Sagittarius or Gemini or Taurus, But no, this is an eclipse that's got its ruler in the sign. So that adds even more to emotional intensity. Emotional intensity. Now, we also have Cancer, Mercury in the sign of Cancer at this time. And so Mercury's really honing in and focusing about family. And then we can't ignore the fact that when the sun and the moon are together, they light each other up. The sun has the ability to add power, to refuel, to energize. And so when they're absolutely together like that, there's an empowerment that occurs with the emotions. The moon ruling Cancer. Cancer is water. Cancer is cardinal water. Water represents feelings and emotions. It's a very spiritual energy as well. If you're a person who's dealt with spirit, whether that's through mediumship or whatever that is. Some people are simply like, sensitives or ghost hunters, or they're just beings that can sense things, right? And if you have worked at all with energy, you know that water is a great conductor of energy. And when you understand that, and when you kind of play around and experiment with that, you realize, it helps you to understand the water houses, the water signs, the Cancer energy, the Scorpio energy, and the Piscean energy. Why it is these are spiritual placements, because there's a higher level of sensitivity where you're feeling beyond the 3D realm. You can feel the emotions of others, and that can include others who are living in the 3D and those who are living in the otherworldly realms, right? Who are living in yes, it can be the angelic realm, but can also be in the astral realm. All right, so there are other realms that exist, and it's these water signs that have that ability to go there. And so mom, the word mom, our mother, right? This, when we see the sign of Cancer, when you see the moon, think of mom, okay? And so all of this is conjunct the North Node. So we call this a solar eclipse, but it is a North Node solar eclipse. And so understanding what that North Node means helps to even glean more knowledge from this event that's happening on the world stage. I did a video back a few weeks ago, and it pinpointed what I believe, what triggered some of the events that became worldly events that we're already living in. It's June 10th. And so we're all well aware now of the tragic loss of life, which we know happens every day in our world. But finally, there was an event that occurred where some good can come out of it, where a loss of a life wasn't in vain, where it brought a change in our belief systems. It shined a giant light on an imbalance in injustices in this world, in our society, in law and order. And the event of this eclipse, I wanted to point this out here, that for many people in their charts, they're saying, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? I have something a couple degrees from this. And so being on the world axis, this big event we can attribute to George Floyd. We can attribute what happened with him, triggered inside each and every one of us, because George Floyd was someone's brother, was someone's son, was someone's uncle, someone's cousin, someone's nephew. George Floyd and the abuse, he is now going to be this symbol, right, for all the abuses that had been going on for all minorities, generally. And that's by gender, that's by race, that's by, a lot of folks consider people who have handicaps, who have physical and mental challenges, definitely considered minorities, and where they have rights that are just not acknowledged enough, not recognized enough. And so this event, this North Node, is how we think. And it's where we're headed for the next 18 months. So find Gemini in your chart. And this is this area of your life, this placement. This is what you're going to be focusing on. Now, recognizing what Gemini energy is, it's your thinking, your speaking, your relating, how you communicate, and then knowing what people, okay? And just understand it's your neighbors, it's your community. And there's more, it's definitely siblings, it's definitely people that you can be working with, it can be coworkers. Gemini represents social media. Venus has a birthday 3 to 4 days after the eclipse, and that's all talked about in the other video. Her cycle, on her birthday, it's an 8-year cycle. And so what that means is that in approximately 8 years' time, she'll have gone around the chart and she'll come back. But she peaks in 4 years. So when we look at the 4-year cycle, Venus will be in Sagittarian energy. Well, Gemini energy is how we think about something, what we think about, what we talk about. And so as Venus is what I value, who I value, what I love, how I love. Venus represents how I receive. And so Venus in Gemini is how I receive information, how I exchange information, how I'm getting information, how I keep track of information, and my love for that, and for what kind of information. Venus will grow and she'll go into the next sign, which is Cancer. And so every time a planet moves, it is evolving, it's growing. So she was doing all this thinking. And also, keep this in mind, I don't think I've mentioned this before, but Venus and Mercury are siblings. They are talking all the time, regardless of where they're located. There is always this communication that's going on. Sometimes their communication is delayed because of the way they angle each other in the chart. But because they're siblings, whatever Mercury's focused on, that becomes Venus's new value. So this is all part of the big picture of a growth process that in 4 years' time, in terms of what Venus loves and values, and seeing that when we understand the sign of Sagittarius energy is that I love to travel. These are words, keywords for Sagittarius. But long distance travel, like this would be getting in the car and, I'm going to drive from coast to coast, or I'm going to get on an airplane and fly over water, go far away. I'm taking a really long trip. That is Sagittarius. Sagittarius is, the ruler is Jupiter, so it expands things. It likes to add to things. So if it's going to travel, it wants to travel big, right? This is that person who likes to drive, but they drive a big rig. This is the person who likes to drive and they've got a big vehicle, ideally. These aren't like exact things because there's other things in your chart that have to be considered. But when you think about this, remember, it's the arrow. It's shooting up at the sky. Now, this is about our beliefs, our faith, our religion, our spirituality. It's also about your future, the way you think about your future. So as Venus goes all the way around and she touches in here, she's going to have, this is where she is, it's this point of where she's her fullest, where she's at her greatest point of receiving, where she's at her greatest point of giving. Because she has this really solid idea a new idea, a solid foundation in her beliefs, in her religion, in her spirituality, or not. But she's more clear on what she values. And so I've been asking folks to make sure that before Venus has her birthday, which will be when her retrograde ends. And so you want to know, like by the 24th and the 25th of June, you want to have a very clear idea of what your values are and what you need going forward for your future. Jupiter and Pluto, you see they're a degree away, and Saturn is also at 040. What we're going to be experiencing, well, how about this? I'm going to tell you about the history. We had this not that long ago. We had very similar placements where we had Jupiter and Pluto almost exactly together. They were a degree apart, which they are almost exactly a degree apart here, right? Jupiter in Capricorn at 25 degrees and 7 minutes. And we've got Pluto in Capricorn, 24 degrees and 19 minutes, both going retrograde. Pluto goes really slow. Jupiter is much faster than Pluto, so Jupiter will eventually get to this mark of 24:19. But what's significant at this time here, and will be for the following days, and as we get to the winding down of the month of June, is Saturn will be getting very close to the 0 degree exact mark. But this is significant on the 21st because the last time we saw this was in March of 2020. We had Saturn at 0 degrees and some minutes, like 30 minutes, 32 minutes I think it was, in Aquarius energy. Saturn is rules and restrictions. Saturn is, okay, this is chaotic. I need to put some order here. There needs to be order, and it's order with the people because that's what, this is groups. Aquarius energy is groups. It's also the internet, folks. It's also, electronic devices, advancements for humanity. It also has a lot to do with aviation and flight. I believe Aquarius, the planet Uranus, which is the ruler of Aquarius, was discovered then. So understanding that planets have personality, and the minute you understand what their personality traits are, you're going to get a whole new world open up to you. You're going to understand that there are cycles, not just within spring, summer, winter, and fall, but there are greater cosmic cycles. These are divine cycles, folks, divine cycles. The Creator created all of this. And when we're ready, what's the saying? When the student is ready, the teacher comes. When the teacher is ready, the student comes. And the sign of Aquarius, the age of Aquarius, is about sharing the knowledge with the people. It's about the people receiving the knowledge. And so there are these deeper understandings, deeper awareness, deeper cosmic teachings that when your consciousness was ready and is ready for them, you will hear them. Not only hear them, you will listen to them, you will understand them. And so Saturn in Aquarius brings about an interesting way of setting structure to that, of establishing new rules and parameters with the people. Now, when Jupiter is conjunct Pluto, we'll talk about Pluto for a little bit. Pluto represents power. Pluto is power. Pluto likes to put down roots. Okay? It's if you're a gardener, you plant something, you want it to take root, right? You want it to be healthy. You want it to be able to take root. And that's what Pluto does. But folks, before Pluto does that, it rips out this old thing that was there. That's, you see the truck coming down the street and they see the trees that are getting into the wires, or they're getting really tall and dangerous, or these trees are really huge and old and there's no more growth on these trees, and they realize, okay, it's time to take these things down. And so Pluto is that I know they have men that like swing up their weights and stuff, and they do a bunch of chainsaw stuff, but at one point that tree has to come down and they have to use a big piece of equipment to do it, right? And that's Pluto. Pluto comes in. Pluto can be the wrecking ball on a building. Pluto takes something and completely destroys it. Now, that sounds like some really harsh words, and it is, but Pluto wants change. Pluto represents deep change. Meaning, if you're going to rebuild a home and it's got a problem in the foundation, and so it's causing problems with your windows, you're like, well, let's just change the windows, right? That'll solve it. And so you go ahead and you do that. But there's still this foundational problem. You got water coming into the basement. You're like, what the hell, right? Because you got to take care of the foundation. And that's what Pluto does. Pluto says, I have to get rid of the old foundation and build a new one, a good one, a one of high quality, because it's Pluto in Capricorn. And Capricorn is structures in the 3D world that were built up over long periods of time. This Capricorn energy reminds me of traditions. Traditions. And I'm using the word traditions because this is exactly what we're facing here. Traditionally, there were ways of thinking, communicating, and speaking to certain people, to certain beings. Traditionally, there were certain beliefs about people, right? And Pluto in Capricorn is an opposition to the Cancer energy. And so as we have planets like Mercury and Venus, the Sun and the Moon come down to the last decan of Cancer energy, it is going to be in opposition to Pluto and Jupiter and eventually Saturn. And so we will feel some, this is going to be triggering emotions. This is what will happen because this is my feelings, but it's my emotions about my family, about my tribe. And please go listen to the other video because I have to get into some other things in this video that were not discussed in that one. Pluto being this deeply transformational energy in the Capricorn energy, in structures, in business, in government, people in power. Pluto's kind of easy to remember because it's that letter P. So it's power. It's intense power. But people in power. All right, so these are your higher ups, right? And there's got to be some changes at a deep level. Now, Jupiter coming along tends to expand upon that, right? Jupiter adds to things. There's something else I got to talk about when we talk about the planet Pluto. Pluto is past lives, it's your history, but Pluto also is our fears. It brings up things we had no idea we were fearful about, or if we were fearful about them, there's another layer of fear added here. This is a very good possibility that at this eclipse, you notice a rise in fear, and not just on the day of the eclipse, but days following. For the rest of June, you might feel this intensity. You might feel fears coming back that you thought you had battled, that you thought you had under control. This would be typical, but the best way to find out if that's really how strongly that would be for you, you would want to see if you have anything at 24 degrees in the other cardinal sign of Aries or 24 degrees in the other cardinal sign of Libra. Now, as you see on this chart, we have a T-square with Pluto, with Eris. And this is an ongoing battle that will be lasting for a long time. Eris is this female Mars. She's said enough is enough. There have been too many things that have been pushed back, that have been swept under the rug, that have been put into the closet, that have been, a blanket has been thrown over, that have been ignored, that have been deliberately covered up. And it is time for an unveiling. It is time for accountability. It is time for things that were in the past but hidden. It is time for things that were behind closed doors so we couldn't see them. It is time for things where there were abuses in power and we need for the light to be shown on them so that we can make a lasting change. Because Pluto is all about rebuilding the foundation so it can take care of the formation of a new structure. Because this is what Capricorn is. This is our material world, our 3D tangible material world. This is our careers. This is our job. This is our responsibilities. These are things we build up over a long period of time. These are our ambitions in the world. Typically, the sign of Capricorn, it's got the same meaning for the for the MC, the 10th house placement for folks. It is your ambition. It is where you express your best. Remember, you got any questions? I've brought up a whole slew of things. You're confused, just comment below. I will get to you. Realizing that we had this past energy and we had lockdown begin then, right? And what I am going to do, I'll show the United States chart in conjunction to this eclipse so that we get a better idea, because for folks who live in the States, we want to know. Well, we're going to show you. We're going to take a walk and we're going to see a peek at that chart. And we're going to understand better why this was, when we see these energies, why they were such a big deal in the United States chart, and why was it that George Floyd, he could have lived anywhere in the world. Why did it happen here in the U.S.? What was it about the United States? Pay attention to Mars. I mentioned it at the beginning. Mars is at 26 degrees here. And as the days after the eclipse, Mars will square up tightly. So it's literally like the 22nd, 23rd, 24th. We're going to be feeling it tightly. And it's going to be tighter, and there's going to be some fear because Jupiter and Pluto get really close. They start getting even closer. Like I said, Jupiter moves faster. And at the very butt end of June, we've got Saturn almost exactly at 0, and we've got Jupiter and Pluto literally matching degrees. And that's at like June 30th and May 1st. And so there's a rise in fear. There's a rise in emotions because this Capricorn energy is at the opposite of Cancer energy. And Cancer energy is our emotions. So if you have something at 24 degrees in Cancer energy, if you have a planet or if you have a point, and a point would mean you want to know, do you have your ascendant at 24 degrees Cancer? Do you have your IC? Like this would be your ascendant, also called a rising sign. This is the IC, which represents usually the cusp of your 4th house. And so you want to know, do you have something there? Do you have one of those significant angles there? If you do, this is that. This is a rise in emotions, an intensity. It could be in fear, okay? If you don't know, as always, comment your stuff below. World access points are coming up again because Mars at 26, 27 degrees, we'll get to the 29 degree mark, and it will be squaring the world access point while it's on a world access point. Mars will be at 0 degrees Aries and then squaring up with the eclipse point. Here's a nugget to take forward with you. 0 degrees Cancer, this point becomes a hot button. So the moon and the sun, they're going to move away. A day later, the sun goes to 1 degrees. 2 days later, 2.5 days later, the moon is already in the sign of Leo 2.5 days later. So there's nobody sitting over here at 0 degrees Cancer anymore. But remember, because this was such a big eclipse on the world axis, this is not going away. This creates a button point, I call it. And I don't want to use the word trigger because we already got one trigger planet and one is enough for me. But this leaves a button. So imagine that any time another planet comes traveling, current planet up in the sky, comes traveling and touches this 0 degrees Cancer. Now, you remember you want to give it like a 2-degree orb. So as soon as something gets to 28, 29 degrees of Gemini, it starts triggering, it starts pressing this button. It starts flipping this Cancer eclipse switch. So depending upon what that planet is, has everything to do with what that would mean. But knowing where this is a located thing in your chart, find out where this point is in your chart, and then always keep track of when something gets up here, which is why we're talking about Mars getting to 29 degrees Pisces. Actually, Mars at 27 degrees Pisces is going to be triggering big time because it'll be touching and triggering the North Node, there's compounded energy here. There's compounded energy. Mars will be squaring. Squares mean stress and tension. They mean testing. It means you're trying to do something because Mars likes to take action. And Mars has been frustrated because it's been in Pisces energy. But the best thing to do with Mars and Pisces energy is to take some spiritual activity. To truly take your desires, what you want to do, what you want to lead, what you want to take action with, and somehow find some spiritual outlet. A lot of people are doing meditations. I do ceremonies. I'm a big native ceremony person. And so I'm out in the yard with a fire, working with the elementals and, calling in different, the four directions and working with archangels. And so there's, I've got the animals out. I mean, there's a whole slew of energies that are at our fingertips when we're willing to be open and we want to listen and we're willing to let them teach us. We then learn their ways. And by learning their ways, we learn the ways of how the universal energies work. We get cosmic downloads. And so we understand how to vibrate at their frequencies. And this is a great time for saying, you know what? This sounds crazy, but there's something about this that's intriguing. I think I might try it. And yeah, please, that's exactly the best way for this energy, Mars in Pisces, to express. But it's going to get to 0 degrees Aries. Now, this is what happens here. Mars is the ruler of Aries energy. Mars is all about taking action. The thing with Mars is it's very impulsive, and it is energetic bursts that are not consistent. They're random. It's just all of a sudden goes from 0 to 10. So Mars, the way to handle Mars energy in Aries is to take physical action. However, it will be squared by the North Node. The talking, the thinking, the communicating, the relating, my siblings, my neighbors, my community, my brothers and sisters from another mother, your internet, your social media, your coworkers. Mars is going to be getting a big square, and they're going to be receiving a square as well. So where we're headed is kind of clashing with the action we want to take at the moment. And so then Mars can get Mars is it's fiery. Aries is very fiery. The thing about Aries energy is because of its impulsivity, it can get itself into trouble. It lacks long-term thinking. Its goal is to ascend its energy to Libran energy, to go to the other end. Libran energy is about, I know how to speak with individuals at wherever it is they're at, because I want to compromise. This is a very compromising energy. This is my way or the highway. That's what this is. That's what Aries is. Aries is just so full of itself. The big ego really shines here, but its own ego desires. It wants to definitely do what it wants to do, when it wants to do it, how it wants to do it. And Mars becomes very powerful in Aries. It gets refueled here. It's like a birthday in a sense for Mars. And it's like, okay, I get to do what I want to do. So when there's this big square, this tension and this stress and testing, it means you're being told no somewhere. Or you're thinking what you want to do for your future, your plans for the next 18 months. There's some sort of action that's taken because Mars comes through and tests it. And says, oh yeah, how badly do you want it? That kind of thing. Remember, Mars is the soldier. Mars is the Marine. And so it's been very beautiful to watch on social media how we are seeing just that. Spiritual activity with the military, right? Mars is the military, the fighter, the soldier. Mars carries weapons and knives. But we're seeing people take a knee, right, with uniforms on. We're seeing them walk with others. We're seeing them willing to say, hey, we weren't listening before. We want to listen. We want to understand where you're coming from. And so this is Mars taking that nice spiritual sacrifice in a sense. That's really what it is. And Mars does not ever want to sacrifice and surrender, because that's what Pisces asks for. Sacrifice and surrender. Mars is about fighting. Mars is not about retreating at all. At all. Mars will never raise a white flag, whereas Libran energy says, yes, I know the value because I'm looking down the road, and I understand that if I surrender right now, it can help me to win the more important battle. Okay? And Libra is this great diplomat, wants things to be peaceful, and so willing to do what it takes to get that peace, willing to do what it takes for things to be fair. Libran energy wants things to be fair. The other thing about the Mars is that it moves fast, and so this is a blessing. It's not going to be squaring the eclipse point for long, but it will. And so I wanted to make sure everyone had a heads up, because the next 6 months, and I'll just tell you that right here and now, Mars, for the rest of 2020, Mars is in this sign. It is in Aries. And so there will be a whole bunch of videos about that, because this is significant in the chart for the U.S. It's significant in all your charts, but if you live in the U.S., you want to know where's Mars, where's Aries in your chart, and then you want to know how does that relate in the chart for the United States, because then you have a bigger idea of how you play into that picture, what your role is in that picture. Mars, very combative in Aries, wants to fight back. So here's the other thing. I showed you how it's squared Cancer energy, but what I didn't tell you, and I'm going to tell you now, is that what else does it square? It squares all cardinal energy, right? So what else is cardinal? Capricorn energy. Capricorn energy. So when Mars gets to 0, it's not such a big deal. I mean, it is a big deal because this is a world access point up here, okay? But there's no other planets around, which is good. As Mars travels and it gets in the higher degrees of Aries energy, you're going to see, right? Because Pluto takes forever to move. Mars will eventually, first of all, be conjunct Eris. And while it's conjunct Eris, it'll be squaring Pluto. So we'll do more videos to talk about what that's going to mean, what that's going to look like. It looks pretty intense. After this 2nd June eclipse, a couple of weeks later, we have another eclipse. This is a lunar eclipse. So this brings about, of course, change, because that's what eclipses mean. It's 14 degrees, so finding out where that is in your chart. Do you have a planet? Do you have a point? You know, a house angle, ascendant, descendant, IC, midheaven. Understanding that Pluto is going to have a role in this. Pluto's a part of this. It's about changes that are going to happen within people who are of authority, people who have power, but it's going to be big, deep changes. Now, I mentioned the Pluto factor. The July eclipse happens in Capricorn energy, July 4th / July 5th. It happens at 14 degrees of Capricorn. The last time Pluto was at this point in Capricorn, it visited here in 2014, 2015. It's actually like 1337. Realizing this makes a trigger point, right? It's an eclipse point, meaning when other things move in the, again, cardinal signs in Aries and in Libra, they're going to be squaring that point, that eclipse point. And so there's that combination factor of, okay, this is an eclipse point. When was Pluto here last? How long ago was it? You know, what else was going on in your life at that time? This is how you make astrology personal. When you think back, you know, if you have an ephemeris, you can find out what's where. And then have a memory to say, wow, this was going on in my life. I was ending this or I was beginning this. Well, this is going to be a full moon lunar eclipse, so we are meant to let go of something. We're letting something go. Now, the sign of Capricorn is all about our responsibilities, our career, our ambitions. And if it's the full moon, you know, being that it's a full moon, it brings light, it shines a light, it's a culmination, it's a closure, but it's an eclipse, so it's a big closure. And Pluto was here at one time. So it's almost as though there's this there's this completion, but it's deep. It goes really deep, but it's big because it's in Capricorn. And Capricorn represents all things that are big, basically, because it's structures that have been set up over a long period of time. Things that we built, that we put a lot of time and effort into. A lot of work went into it. So for some, this could be walking away from a career. This could be, you know what? I really, after all of 2020, even though by July we're only 6-7 months into 2020, but so much has happened in 2020. It was like we lived a lifetime here already in 6 months for some of us. But we have this realization. We're done with what we thought we wanted to do. We're done with responsibilities that we had that we are no longer willing to work towards. It's what we thought we were supposed to do. That's a big part of this because it's Capricorn, and Capricorn is our responsibilities. So there's some area, there's something in your life, you felt this desire, you felt this urge that you had to do it. You know, whether it was because mom and dad wanted you to do it, or because everybody in my family always does this, they always go into the military, or they're, whatever that is. Like, we have these crazy things within our family heritage and our lineage where we connect and we say, well, I have to do this because it's expected of me, And so it's a responsibility that you've kind of placed upon yourself. And you're coming to the realization that no longer holds true for you. You have this big aha. And so it's connecting it to something that you either kept working on in 2014, 2015. And I'm saying those years because Pluto moves really slow. And so it can sit at a point for years. Now, the big thing about that eclipse coming up is that there will be a major testing that's going on with the other cardinal energies. Okay. And so that's something that I thought everybody would need and want to know in advance because, it's, we know that in July, at the end of June, going into July, we know that Mars will be transiting this energy, which means, yes, Mars will eventually get to 24 degrees of Pluto, or better yet, Mars will get to that 9 degrees of Aries, and then it'll get to the 14 degrees of Aries. So, before it even gets to this Eris at 24, it hits 14, and that is the eclipse point, okay? And so what that looks like when Mars is in Aries, I kind of talked about it earlier, but it's really a lot of, it's almost an anger because Mars gets very infuriated, it gets very fired up. And it wants to do something. It wants to start something. Aries is all about starting stuff. And it doesn't mean they have to be instigators, but they're always seeking something new because they like adventure. They like exploring. They like, for them to experience something they've never experienced before gives them an understanding about themselves. Now, you all have Aries somewhere in your chart. When we connect the anger and even uncertainty, because Pluto is more powerful than Mars. And so when they square up, they send beams of energy to each other. Mars literally shoots a beam of energy to Pluto, and Pluto does the same thing. Yeah, I'm using an imaginary Mars here at 14 degrees. But I just wanted to give you a heads up. I don't want to go any further into that because I'll do that at another time when we get closer to the event of that eclipse, but I thought that you would appreciate having a heads up because it helps us to make plans, even though it looks like, again, even if we make plans, we're being challenged because we want to do something, but it's a square by Pluto. And Pluto's like, you know what? Things have to change. We have to make changes. And so you still have to remember the North Node stuff. Be flexible in your thinking. Now that takes me to the last part of this video, which is I want to share more astrology. I want to share all astrology. And the way that I am going to do that is I've gotten some new friends within the YouTube community, some really, really beautiful souls. And I've gotten a greater understanding of how to relate in a more community-wise way. And what that means is I put out a lot of effort. I put out a lot of my time and energy. And the truth is, I love doing this. If there was, if I had $1 trillion, if I won the lottery right now, I would still be doing this, folks. And so the cool thing about astrology is it helps you to find out what is that thing that whether you got paid for it or not, you would keep doing it. Right? Whether anybody thought it was cool or whether anybody listened to what you were doing, would you still be doing it, right? Would you still have that love? Now, some folks are fortunate. They have the ease of that inborn love for a thing right from the day they're born. And they never walk away from it. It's just this constant in their life. It's their partner, right? It's their other. And that doesn't mean necessarily a person, okay? It means something that has you. Something that got you, something that has your heart just as much as that once you dove into it, you started to have its heart. And for me, astrology is one of those things. I realize that's not for everybody. And so here, within this community, I want to share the knowledge in a way where you can hear more about you, but specifically for you. So what I'm offering is for people who are committed, loyal listeners and viewers, I am going to set up a system way to reward people who are loyal, who are genuine fans, who say, hey, let's dance, let's communicate, let's hug. So here it goes. For all those within the All Astrology community, the dedicated listeners, the sometimes listeners, the I'm only going to listen when shit ain't going right in my life listener, here's the deal. When I see people who are commenting, liking, being consistent with all the uploads, by commenting as you're watching the video, so I know you've been watching the video, right? For people who can prove they have been doing the work, that they've been committing, that they've been listening, I'm going to offer a free all astrology reading. What I'm going to do then is there's a handful of people, I can think of some people right now off the top of my head, that would fall into that bucket. So now how would I decipher? What I'm going to do is I am going to steal an idea. Thank you, Miss K, for doing this on your show. And I love it. I think it's a wonderful way to prove who the loyalty folks are that are in your community. But you can tell as a creator, as a channel creator, who's commenting and who's engaging, who's liking, who's a subscriber and who stays a subscriber, who doesn't turn around and then unsubscribe after they've gotten the advice that they need from you, which God knows I've given out so much free astrology info by doing that. And then lo and behold, like a few days later, I lose a subscriber and I never hear from them ever again. And so I want to try to extend what I'm doing to give rewards to those that reward me. And when you engage with me here in the community by liking, by sharing, by commenting, by subscribing, all these things help build this channel. And I need the community to help build this channel. But I am more than willing to share what comes natural to me with you. And that is this knowledge here. And so I want to extend a free reading. Once I see there are people who are being committed, and I'm constantly seeing, I can tell by reading their comments that they're engaged and that they're here, that they're listening to the whole video, which means I'll, of course, try to cut my video times down. I will then take all of those names and put those like in a hat, so to speak, and pull a winner out of the hat. Okay, and then I'll have more details as to how that will evolve down the line, because I want everyone to know that it's being done fairly. It's not, oh, this person is this person's best friend or their sibling or, whatever it is. I don't want anybody to think anything like that. I want it to be as fair as possible. So I will give more information as the time goes on as to how we're going to build this up. And please give suggestions as to how that should evolve. I mean, this is your channel just as much as it's my channel. I contribute, but I can't survive without you. It takes a community to build this all astrology baby. And so together we can do this. And together, gosh, using the knowledge of astrology, this can be a wonderful, wonderful relationship that benefits us both, as opposed to one person reaping all the rewards. Peace.